Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe, and welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Kristy Jansen.
And I'm Summers McKay.
And we are part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to help us all get focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy, driving to yoga-worthy podcast. Today is Friday, the 8th of April, 2022. Hello, Miss Fabulosity. How are you today?
I'm good, Yogi Summers. I can tell you're feeling jazzed by your new yoga routine. You're actually going to yoga class.
Yeah. So yoga class number 2, which, as you and I discussed, is like I have not been in-person yoga in more than 3 years, probably almost like 3.5 years, because scary pregnancy, then postpartum, then COVID, then anyway. But I will say yoga class number 2, I had no idea my triceps could hurt this much.
Oh,
I had no idea.
Those chaturangas, huh?
Yep, so many vinyasas, and oh lordy. So yeah, it was funny because I found myself in the class smiling at my pain, if that sounds even possible. I was like laughing at how much it hurt, because yoga used to be something that was just sort of part of my everyday, right? It happened all the time. And yes, we've done our online yogas and stuff over the break, over the pandemic, which is not a break. I don't even know what I'm saying. But it was funny. And like my feet are cramping, and I didn't know that there was a part of my ankle that would hurt that way. And so I'm very tickled by the experience of finding my way back into this body, which I feel like I have not been part of. I've sort of been a passenger in my own body for a few years, and yoga is just such a gift when you're able to practice it. So I am feeling very jazzed about my yoga. So
that's it's good. Yeah. And speaking of being in your body, I do feel like that is a gift that yoga offers. That's been my experience as a yoga practitioner. It's almost a meditative practice that brings you out of your head and into your physical being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have our sort of basics on the Optimist Daily. We're like, make sure you journal, make sure you hydrate, rotate your houseplants, do some yoga. But they're all sort of good basics that it's very easy to forget to do.
Yeah. And being in community, I've got to find myself a yoga class I can go back to. It's been a couple of years since I've been to an actual in-person yoga class. And now that I'm watching you glow in our morning check-ins here, I feel jealous. And I would like to find my way back to an in-person yoga class. I did go yesterday for the first time. I went into a Target without a face mask.
Wait, no. Tell everyone what you called it in our meeting.
Okay,
beforehand.
I said I went commando into Target. I felt like I was going in there without my bra or my underwear. I felt like I was going into a store naked because I did not wear my mask. I was with my son he was like, no, it's not required. I'm not putting on a mask. And I'm like, okay, then I won't either. And we'll just be. And I felt risque. I felt seriously. And nobody else in the store was wearing one that I could see. But over the last week or so, they relieved that pressure in California. That's no longer required in most stores. And I've been the weirdo wearing my mask still. Mm-hmm. So it was my first day of actually taking it off. And
Commando with your whole smile.
My whole face. Everybody. You can see my lips. My chin.
Suddenly you have to wear chapstick again.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to a podcast that was talking about some of the identity and personal insecurity issues that have come from wearing a mask for so long. There are actually a lot of teenagers who, in addition, we know that the pandemic was probably hardest on teens, right? Like that, the pandemic experience of isolation, the education experience, and then there were also really good things that came out of it as far as relationship building, but the insecurity and then this ambivalence for a lot of them was really hard. But it also talked about that many of them don't want to take the face mask off because it has created a boundary, a barrier. They don't have to worry about how they look.
Those braces don't look so offensive.
Yeah. And so, I have young people in my life who are very resistant to taking off the face mask. And I've seen the young people many that I care for, wear those face masks almost like a boundary or barrier between themselves and other people. And I think there's, a psychological process that's going to take some time for us to find our way to whatever is a new just sort of experience being out in the world.
Yeah.
Full teeth and full smiles and all. And no more handshakes. Those aren't coming back, but fist bumping with a smile.
Or the namastes as opposed to the heart hugs.
Right. Heart hugs. No, yeah. These concerns, these stresses really are a big part of what our stories are about today, actually, is that the anxiety and just personal presentation concerns. So I feel like I want you to dive into your story first, because really, I think it addresses some great tools on community and anxiety.
It does. I agree. The headline reads, Coping with Climate Anxiety, 9 Tips for Personal Resilience. And this is an article which I actually commissioned and helped to create because I've been working on a project studying climate anxiety and studying resources for climate anxiety and building a toolkit for climate anxiety. And so this is one of those toolkits, and you'll look in the near future, we're going to continue this theme. But I mean, human reactions and climate change is also a psychological problem. It's not just a problem with our cities, our infrastructure, our world. It's also an emotional problem. It is a mental problem. And there's a lot of links that have been coming out between mental health and climate change. The Psychological Association recently published a report that documents this direct relationship. If you've seen the news lately, there's been more and more talk about people who identify as having climate anxiety, which is feeling anxious about the direction that climate change is heading and the disruptions in our everyday lives, the idea that the world is not going to be able to be livable in the future. This is particularly evident among young people who will one day have to carry on the torch of climate stewardship. If you read the news and you keep up to date about new studies, there was a recent IPCC report that said it's now or never. We have the ability to make these differences, these changes, but we have to do it. And there's so much headwinds in the way the status quo is in relation to our energy structure, the way our houses are built, the way our transportation works. So anyway, it feels almost insurmountable. And that fact that it feels so big adds to the anxiety and despair around it. Anyway, I've been really steeped in the psychological effects of climate change and the psychological effects of actual trauma that's related to ecological disasters. But this is an article that talks about some strategies, some tips for personal resilience and building your personal resilience in the face of the changing climate. These are all really good ideas if you have any kind of psychological distress or anxiety around lots of different areas, but specifically around the environmental concerns. And this comes out of the APA. So I'll just go through them real quick, but it's all about tips for personal practices, beliefs, and social connections that can help build emotional resilience. First of all, build a belief in your own resilience. First step is believing that you have the ability to rise to the challenge. It feels overwhelming, but if you can understand that that's an emotional reaction and believe in yourself, believe in self-efficacy, believe in your ability to handle the challenges that come, just having that trust in yourself is an important mindset. And that's part of what we try to encourage people to get attached to with our solutions-oriented focus on addressing the world's biggest challenges with that solution-focused mindset. The second one, which is one of my favorites, clearly, as the Optimist Daily, is to foster optimism, because it is so important to believe that there can be positive outcomes and not get caught up in the doomsdayism, But you have to be realistic, but you also have to be hopeful that there is a possibility. You can foster changes and growth. And sometimes change is scary, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be negative.
Yeah, we talk about optimism being a choice, right? Optimism is a
Uh-huh.
choice, and it is practice. It's a muscle you have to exercise. And I
Mm-hmm.
like this because it reminds us that even in the face of extreme climate concern, we can choose to practice that muscle of optimism and solution thinking.
Well, and get caught up in the possibilities as opposed to the losses.
Yes.
Third, to cultivate active coping and self-regulation. So that means benefiting from a support system, skills of active coping, which is seeking support, seeking solutions. Don't get caught up in the, well, I just can't do anything, so I just going to curl up and pretend it's not happening, or,
Isolation of it, right?
Isolation, but by finding supportive networks, finding solutions, and also focusing on self-regulation, which is focusing on long-term gratification rather than immediate. They're both associated with high resiliency in your individual makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Find a source of personal meaning, whether that's personal faith or mindfulness or having a sense of purpose, doing something that promotes, that is of good, or getting connected with whatever your personal meaning is, will promote personal well-being, and it'll that's a part of resilience. It can boost your personal preparedness, which means if you are creating an emergency kit, if you're in an area where there might be a wildfire or a hurricane, you're going to have to potentially evacuate or deal with environmentally based concerns, add things that have personal value to your emergency kit. Add something that is kind of, a journal. Add pictures of your kids that give you a feeling of happiness and positivity. I don't know, something that actually promotes your personal well-being. Take your emotional health into account, not just your physical well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And support social networks. That's not Facebook or Instagram, but rather your in-person or your real social support and connection that can help you. What do they say? A burden shared is a burden to have. So
like that.
Finding friends, finding family members, finding people who you care about and trust, and investing in those kind of connections really can help with personal resiliency. Similarly, encouraging connections with parents, family, and other role models, looking towards people who are able to, lend a listening ear and can maybe give you a hug, are super important, especially for children, to make sure that they have strong relationships with adults who can provide a sort of a stability, and when possible, uphold connection to place. So reinforce that positive connection to where you live or a place you cherish. It's kind of getting connected to nature, whatever the nature is. If you live in a city, find a community garden maybe to get involved with, or find a beach to help clean up, or a park to help clean up, and maintain connections to one's culture, especially among refugees or immigrants who've been displaced. Maintaining connections to your culture in the past can be beneficial to protecting your mental health. It's about adding to that personal resiliency, that sense of who I am, who am I, and how do I belong in the world. But all of these tips, what they have in common is that concept of connection, either with ourselves or with others that we're emotionally close to. The message is that although changes to the climate can seem frightening and overwhelming, and we're going to have to do some things differently, because the way that our society's been structured over the last 50 to 100 years has not been sustainable for the long term. With the right tools and social support, anybody can promote greater resilience in themselves and in their communities, so that we can overcome these challenges together. So that's what this article, that's why.
I love this article because it is just, I think, not only climate anxiety, but all of the different anxieties that we face. Yeah. This is really, really valuable. I'm going to jump to the next story, but my headline also takes on a general sense of anxiety or concern that affects our most productive times. But I love it because it's a new movement in how we show up in the world. My headline reads, "What is body neutrality and how can I achieve it?"
Right, which kind of goes into that anxiety that we were talking about with removing our face masks, and also anxiety about how we show up in the world.
How we show up in the world, exactly. So the body positivity movement on social media promotes self-confidence and love for your body and your flaws. And while it is well-intentioned, the movement may actually be kind of unrealistic for some and may end up, oddly enough, putting more pressure on those who are already experiencing insecurities around their appearance, right? If you're constantly reminded, be positive, be positive, it's sort of what I would describe as like self-abusive gratitude. Where you're just when people are like, be grateful, be grateful, be grateful, and you're like, no, but I'm kind of mad right now. Well, be positive, be positive, be positive. Well, no, I'm not really positive. Well, guess what, guys? Body neutrality is a new movement that's gaining momentum. This mentality encourages people to stop viewing their bodies as a center of their self-image and instead focus on how they feel. Some of the downfalls of body positivity is that while it was started by activists in the late 60s and it was built around a fat acceptance movement, which was, really trying to minimize systemic discrimination that fat people face in media and everyday lives, whether at work or school, even just during a doctor's appointment, fat representation on the internet became intrinsic to fat activism. And this surge in visibility actually birthed the concept of body positivity. Well, now body positivity has largely been co-opted. It's a buzz phrase or a hashtag, and it has been commodified is now absorbed actually in diet culture. Diet companies make money off of people's insecurities adopting a body positive identity perspective, but they still portray an ideal standard of beauty that's just a few sizes bigger, right? So the movement, while pushing back against current body ideals, doesn't actually challenge the societal placement of beauty as the ultimate accomplishment. It assumes that everyone eventually should get to a place where they're positive about their physical experience. All right, so that might not work for everybody. Body neutrality is, in fact, about seeing yourself as more than your body and more than how your body presents itself to the world. It takes away the value of physical attractiveness and encourages people to build a relationship with themselves that goes beyond reaching the ever-changing beauty ideals. Neutrality emphasizes that the body is not the most influential part of your identity. There are a few tips here on how you can learn to feel neutral in your body. And this article came at such a perfect time because, as Kristy and I have talked, and I've said it a lot, figuring out how to live in this 44-year-old postpartum, post-pandemic, post-COVID, post-everything body, I'm confused about how I show up in the world. And instead, I get to just be neutral. I get to laugh at how much it hurts to do yoga, not punish myself for the fact that it hurts, but just feel neutral about it. You don't actually have to love your body. You can create body neutrality by recognizing that reaching and maintaining body positivity is unrealistic. And part of you will constantly be striving to feel positive about your body, whereas neutrality just is maintaining a love for yourself in other areas. So how do we build it? To start building a body neutral image of yourself, try to see your body as smaller parts and list all the parts you're okay with, like no matter how small. Like I love my eyelashes.
My pinky finger is pretty cool.
I have a great left hand index finger. My right hand index finger has been like massacred through surgery, but my left index finger is fantastic. People tend to think that they don't like their appearance as a whole simply because they're unhappy with one or two parts, or perhaps more visible that take up more space. But if you break down your body into a ton of small parts, like your fantastic right earlobe, it's easier to feel okay about your body as a whole. Next, think about everything you love about yourself that lies outside of your physical appearance. Maybe you have a beautiful singing voice, or you're a fast runner, or you're a great walker, or you're a great couch sitter. You think about things that you love about yourself. You're a good friend. You're a funny person. Now, also try to acknowledge that we've been taught to equate physical appearance with self-worth. If you can recognize that you've simply been taught to value yourself based on your looks, then it'll be easier for you to change that mindset. You know, you may have opted against going to the beach because you didn't want to wear a bikini, but if you no longer are concerned about whether or not your presentation of self is going to allow you to enjoy that experience, you're still going to go have those adventures that you might.
The sad thing about that, if you're afraid of, wearing your bathing suit, is that then you've robbed yourself of the experience of going into the ocean.
Exactly.
that
Of
body
being at
of
the
water.
beach. Right.
And,
Right.
and
So
just the enjoyment of swimming and how physically fun that can be.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I have a new fitness wear company that I have started using. It's called Outdoor Voices, and it really is about great quality product, but it's also very much about like what is going to make you feel best doing whatever sport you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it because it's like I don't have to cover up when I go for a hike because I'm afraid that my legs don't look as tan or as thin as they used to. I'm just going to wear comfortable clothes and go for a great hike.
Yeah, you know what this kind of makes me think is that it's like recentering your experience of your body from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. Right? So how do you feel in yourself and in your body as opposed to how do you think it looks to other people?
Exactly. Okay. So we have to wrap because we've had so much fun talking today. A few other stories. We have newly discovered chemical treats plastic waste to absorb CO2. Samsung will now make it easier for Galaxy users to repair their own devices. Like that one. I'm a Samsung girl. 5 easy solutions from our Optimus CEO. This is my favorites. If you're interested in more of my favorites, go on and read those today. And honing this practice can give us an antidote to boredom. What else do we have, Kristy?
There's an article about how locked-in individuals can type quicker with this new system. The strange sounds of Mars have been recorded for the first time. I love this, the soundscape of Mars. I love it. New research opens our eyes to the healing power of blueberries.
Yum.
And video games are becoming more accessible for players with disability. That and much, much more on theoptimistdaily.com. Thanks everybody for listening to the Optimist Daily Update. We promise to continue to share positive solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in the changing world, help ensure it's changing for the good, and help ensure that we're all living from the inside out, right? We promise to keep covering current events with accurate, legitimate sources and offering you the kinds of information we all need to chart new paths for all of us.
Hey, everybody, it's Friday. You know what we want. We want you to become an emissary or share us on social, talk about us on a hike, tell somebody in yoga about the Optimist Daily, or just be inspired. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We'll be back on Monday with more solutions.